guys. So I am indeed from out of town, and I also just flew in today, and my arms are also very tired. And I can't see anybody, which might be better that way. So I'm not entirely sure how well my story will fit with the theme, but I think it will. This will be about the first time that I was sent to the principal's office as a young man. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a place where there wasn't a lot of swearing or a lot of obscene gestures and that sort of thing, which made the displaying of the middle finger, it gave it a lot of power. But I was also terrified to, be a bad kid and flip people off like that. But I was fascinated with it. And so then one day, my little friend Mike Dallin, who was this little redhead kid who couldn't pronounce most things right, but he was great. And he came up to me one day, and he suddenly just went like that. And I was shocked because, you don't do that. But then he said, wait, and he turned his hand around and said, "My thumb's up behind it, so it doesn't count." And I found that brilliant. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever heard. Because this would allow me to skirt this line between this sort of deviant behavior of showing people my middle finger, but then also, maintain my good kid cred as well. So I was a huge fan of this, and I couldn't wait to start showing people. So fortunately, my chance came right away because it was first grade and we had a school-wide assembly. And so being in first grade, we were sitting on the floor in front of the auditorium, and as the rest of the students all filed in, I sat on we got there before most people and had to wait. And so with this time, I decided to turn around. Well, I decided to show my friends this new trick that I'd learned. So sitting there, and I turned to my friend Nathan. I said, "Hey, Nathan." And he turned around, and I went. And he went, "Oh." And I said, "Wait for it. My thumb's up behind it, so it doesn't count." And he went, "Oh, that's amazing." And then I said, "Hey, Jeremy." And Jeremy turned around, and I went. And Jeremy went, I said, "Hold on, the thumb." And he went, "Oh, that is brilliant." And so after I'd exhausted the supply of friends immediately around me, I looked around and I didn't know who else to show this to. So I basically just hopped up off my butt onto my knees and just kind of turned around to the rest of the school and just went. And I was just, my thumb was up, it didn't count. At that moment, basically my arm was torn out of its socket because Mrs. Godfrey, this very scary teacher, she wasn't my teacher, which kind of made her even scarier, was literally dragging me out of the auditorium into the principal's office. And I'm pretty sure I never gained my feet that entire trip to the principal's office because I was stumbling and she was really dragging me. And once I saw the direction we were headed toward the principal's office, I just immediately burst into tears. Because that's what you do when you're a good kid. You don't go to the principal's office. And so as I realized what was happening, of course I'm crying and crying and crying. And the principal's there lecturing me. He was this short, bald man with very hairy arms. He kind of looked like Mario from the Mario 64 games, but way less jolly and way meaner. And he basically kind of grumbled at me and was like, "This kind of behavior is unacceptable." And I'm just sitting there crying as a 6-year-old. So, and I tried to explain that the thumb was up so it didn't count, but that didn't really make a difference for him. Plus, I was crying so hard I couldn't get the words out. Anyway, he called my mom. I went home in shame. And for the first and only time in my memory of my family, we weren't a grounding family, but I was grounded that day, which just felt so strange, and it was this weird taste of like subversion and being a bad kid. But what I was really terrified, though, was when my dad was going to get home that night. He was also a bald man, but he wasn't short. He was a large guy and very sweet, but not when you got in trouble. And so I sat there just terrified all day until he got home from his work, where he was building houses with his huge forearms, and and I was just so ready for him to just be really mean to me. But what happened instead was he came in and he sat me down on the side of my bed, and in a really great display of parenthood, he talked to me, and we were a religious family, so he talked about, somewhere in some scripture, it talks about avoiding even the appearance of evil. That was after I explained to him that, my thumb was up, so it didn't count. And to his great credit, he saw that I had suffered enough by this, arm socket removal and by the trauma of Mr. Mon grumbling at me and missing whatever that assembly was, and also having this great trick removed from me. So instead of getting mad, he just let the punishment stand as it was. And yeah, so now to conclude my story, I would just like to show you all that I think you are all number one. Thank you.